Hi everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Hafsa Mohammed. I'm the Communications Officer at Open Development and Education, and I'm very pleased to be moderating the session on technology and innovation in education. So just a bit about who we are as OpenDev and why we do what we do. OpenDev is an educational research organization which was incorporated in 2014 in the UK, and it is composed by a multinational team that believe in the power of equitable education for everyone. We have conducted multiple projects across Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and North America. We have demonstrable experience of approaches to enhancing teaching and learning in low and middle income countries. And we are also a leading organization for teacher professional development in Sub-Saharan Africa. Equity, evidence, and accessibility are at the very heart of our approach, and we seek to support and build local capacity wherever possible in our implementation and research. Our agile and adaptive management informs our approach to improving education systematically and through individuals promoting technology use where it offers the best value proposition in line with the principles of digital development. So just a little around what the session will be about. Today, we'll be diving into a crucial conversation about how we can unlock the potential of data and evidence to drive meaningful change in education, especially in ways that are inclusive, actionable, and grounded in real-world contexts. We're joined by an incredible group of speakers from OpenDev who bring diverse perspectives from across research, practice, and policy. First, we'll hear from Dr. Taskeen Adam, co-director at OpenDev, who will walk us through the Unlocking Data Initiative, which is a very powerful partnership working to improve how data and evidence are used in policymaking, particularly in the Global South. We'll then be joined by Christopher Clune, analyst at OpenDev, specializing in unpacking the data ecosystem, who will then introduce us to the GETIN project and the work being done through the WISE AI testbed to build more open, systemic ways of generating EdTech evidence that's relevant, rigorous, and collaborative. After that, we'll have Guguletu Dube, an analyst at OpenDev specializing in data collection, who will take us into the field with the Eswatini Early Grade Project, sharing insights on how digital tools like Tangerine are transforming data collection, working behind the scenes but making a significant impact. And finally, we'll have Mohammed Sharad, specializing in collating evidence through testbeds, who will close with a look at how evidence infrastructure itself is evolving, including adaptations to evidence libraries that aim to increase accessibility and usability for researchers and policymakers. Whenever you're ready, Taskin, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Hafsa. So yes, today I'm going to speak about a project that I'm very passionate about and that's very close to my heart, and that's the Unlocking Data Initiative. So this initiative actually started way back in 2020, and it wasn't even much. It was a group of organizations that were really passionate about telling the story of education in Africa and not having this narrative be told by others, especially with the occurrence of many international partners doing research in African countries and sort of holding that narrative. So it was really about reclaiming that narrative and being able to really unpack the needs of African education systems. So the Unlocking Data Initiative, it's basically at its heart a community of practice that connects African scholars, NGOs, national statistic offices, policymakers, basically all with the vision of improving access to and use of education data. And at the beginning of 2024, we actually started our first, I would say, funded project by the IDRC. And the specific project is focused on scaling uses and users of education data. And so this partnership, this collaborative, is led by Zizi Afrique, and it's supported by Education Sub-Saharan Africa, EdTech Hub, where I'm based, and eBase Africa, the University of Malawi Center of Education Research and Training. And together, these organizations are working within the three main countries, Malawi, Cameroon, and Kenya, to deep dive into the study, to use these countries as a case study for how we could unpack and unlock data use. So today I'll be presenting about this latter project, but first I just want to tell you, like over the past I would say, 5 years, what we've really uncovered with the challenge of data and why it's been so difficult to use data in education systems. So within our context that we were looking at, particularly in African context, the data is often scattered and decentralized, so it's really hard to disaggregate where it's coming from. Often when we finally get hold of data, for example, through the data sets linked to evidence studies, they're often outdated and they're not really accurate to be able to make decisions from. There's often a lack of funding in the ability to collect data and to promote data literacy, and to obtain specialists to analyze the data. And then there's also a difficulty in certain types of data. So there's often restrictions in data that's not open access, or data that's collected by the government or non-government partners, such as administrative data. That's hard to access that data that would be really useful to provide a comprehensive and holistic data set of a country's education system. There's then also lack of quality assurance once we do actually get the data. So it might not be cleaned and presentable. It might not be checked for sensitivity and privacy. So there's just lots of barriers from the data side, never mind taking that data into actionable insights that policymakers can use. So to focus on actually this unlocking data project, the aim is to scale up the use of education data by strengthening the capacity of policymakers and researchers to access and utilize the existing data in order to formulate policies and implement and upgrade policies and plans. And we're focusing specifically on foundational learning within this space. So the unlocking data approach is what we've hypothesized as the method of how this can be done. And this method sort of takes into account that it's not really just about the data itself, but about the humans that are involved in the system. And that's why we've presented this actually as a community of practice rather than, let's just say, a simple research project. So the 4 prongs that underpin this approach is the mapping and situational analysis at each country level, so understanding what is the lay of the land. Then using that data and that evidence to help address and prioritize research questions and evidence gaps to help shape countries' decision-making around education. And then to cultivate communities of learning within the country, within different districts and levels within the country, as well as across the region, across countries. And then the last prong is about sharing and synthesizing experience between countries, sharing lessons, resources, toolkits, platforms that we can all utilize, sharing these as global public goods. Just a little bit more about our actual research questions. For the first question, we're looking at the most effective ways of scaling this unlocking data approach within the 3 countries that we mentioned in Malawi, Kenya, and Cameroon, and then how we can synthesize the learnings from this to share across the continent. The second question then talks about that, like looking at how we've established these communities of learning about data use within these countries and how we can share that approach in new geographies. The third one then emphasizes the role of communities of learning to help and support each other. And the last one looks at approaches for data collection, analysis, and use on sharing foundational learning and how that can be made equitable and inclusive. And I'll speak a bit more about that. So we are at the early stages of this research, where we're in between looking at our situational analysis and our and the evidence gaps that the evidence base is telling us. And so some of the key findings that we've found when we look at this is the data gaps and the disparities. So there's a strong weighting between authorship of evidence that is done by males rather than females, and then within that, a stronger weighting of males reading things like experimental studies versus qualitative approaches. There's also a skew and focus in foundational learning, which so within the frame of foundational learning, there's a heavier weighting towards foundational literacy and numeracy, but less focus on topics such as socio-emotional learning and equity, and teaching at the right level, and other aspects that link to foundational learning. There's also capacity constraints within the government as well as within researchers that hamper the effective use of data for policy making, so that uptake of data to inform policy. And then the policy and practice disconnect, which means that there's weak links between or real-time links between these data systems and the education policy, and that basically results in an underutilization of the evidence for decision making. Based on these findings, these early findings that we have, we've already started to formulate some recommendations around this, which is the importance of strengthening the data systems, so right from start to end, from the data collection and the real time, and I think Gugulethu will speak about that as well, to improving the accessibility and removing the barriers to access this data, and then that ability to uptake this data and turn it into actionable insights that policymakers can use. So all around this is enhancing the capacity of government agencies to be able to analyze and use this data and help prioritize their research questions that they want out of the education database. Focusing on equity, because often there's a lack of inclusiveness of different regions or different subgroups within education systems, and how do we use this education data to understand and learn how we can better serve those population groups. Focusing on fostering partnerships, so the idea that it's not just academia and policymakers, but there's also the civil society, private sectors. There's many people, international NGOs that all contribute to this data space. So how can we leverage them and bring everybody together so we don't have siloed and fragmented data pockets, but everybody working to one vision. And lastly, prioritizing holistic learning. So as I mentioned, there was a focus on numeracy and literacy, but less focus on other aspects of foundational learning like socio-emotional learning, and critical thinking and things alongside that to help develop the whole child. So I think those are the findings I plan to share today. There are lots more resources online. We've just released a bunch of evidence gap maps in each country and interactive maps that can help you understand the evidence base, the lay of the land of evidence in those countries. So you're welcome to check out our website for that. And with that, I'll pass it on to Gugulethu.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Hafsa introduced me, my name is Gugulethu, and I'm an analyst here at OpenDev. And for the past 3.5 months, we've been working on a project on strengthening early grade numeracy and literacy in the Kingdom of Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. And we have been strengthening that through EGMA and EGRA, which I'll get into right away. So we were asked to develop summative assessment tools for the Kingdom of Eswatini, focusing primarily on grade 3s. And this was centered around English, Siswati, and mathematics. And one of the outputs was making sure that those tools that we create are tied to the competency-based framework of Eswatini, and also making sure that we are collaborating well with the different stakeholders. And it is an adaptation process where it's co-creative and all the local stakeholders have an input in. And what we did next is create tools for early grade reading assessments as well as early grade mathematics assessments. So these are tools that happen one-on-one between the student and the numerator. And these are 15 to 20 minute assessments. And essentially they have subtasks that focus on literacy, comprehension, non-words, reading, and letter sounds, as well as the numeracy aspect that involves just basic arithmetic understanding. You may wonder, why do we need to conduct EGRA and EGMA? So one key insight that comes from EGMA and EGRA is that reading is the most strongest predictor of lifelong learning and success. And having data at an early stage, it allows teachers to target their interventions and trainings and make sure that the children are growing. And also we noticed that about 70% of 10-year-olds in the Sub-Saharan African region cannot read a simple sentence or complete basic mathematic tasks, and foundation learning gaps that are detected early and that are not detected early, rather, will have a consequential effect on kids as they go through primary as well as secondary education. And having the ability to create or gather data at an early age will help us improve teaching, learning, and policy. And how do we use EGRA and EGMA data? Firstly, we conduct the assessments and administer this to the children. And then the second would be data analysis. Once we've gathered this data, we calculate the literacy and numeracy benchmarks, and then we report this data through different kinds of reports. And these reports are shared with the schools and the relevant ministries. And then we target those interventions based on the results that we have gathered. And then the monitoring, obviously, that happens over time to reassess and track improvement or consistent challenges. So after we have gathered this data, what we did is we had a pilot project, and the objectives of our pilot were twofold. We wanted to test the administration of these tools and see whether or not they are working, and to also evaluate how learners are responding to the tools and where the tools may need refining before the national baseline rollout. And next slide, please. How did we fare when it comes to the piloting? So we trained 30 enumerators in total and observed about 64 assessment sessions and gathered data across English, Siswati, and mathematics. And the data that we found was quite telling, right? That many learners struggled with tasks such as reading non-words or solving mathematic problems, and others were unfamiliar with the structure of timed tasks, or they lacked the strategies to solve problems under pressure, particularly for 2- and 3-digit problems. And that brings me to the key concept in our work today, which is invisible technology. And that is the use of a platform such as Tangerine, which helps us decode the data that we have collected on the ground. And basically, Tangerine is a platform where enumerators on the ground are able to assess the student, and they have timed and untimed components, and you're able to get the data in real time. It doesn't require Wi-Fi, so you're collecting all this data in peri-urban areas, and it automatically gets uploaded into Tangerine. So it ensures that data is centralized, and also you're able to do surveys on the platform as well. At the same time, you're able to conduct interviews, and all of your data gets automatically uploaded once you sync it to Wi-Fi when you get back to a place that is internet effective. So that is how we were able to actualize our work through the aid of Tangerine, right? And also one thing that we realized whilst we're on the ground, right, is that although the tech was running quite smoothly, there was a bigger issue at hand, which is foundational readiness. Some of the students are not trained on the different mechanisms of how to approach a task and how to arrive at a problem quickly. So whilst the tech was important in helping us analyze the data collected and report on it, there's still a large gap when it comes to foundational readiness, right? And if students are not trained enough on how to better approach tasks, the tech is important, but the foundation is just as important in order to improve and strengthen early grade assessments. So what does this mean for policy and practice? So firstly, digital tools must align with learner readiness. We can't just assume that children are prepared for the kind of tasks you ask them to do, right? And we need to be able to invest in the human beings, which is the enumerators, the teachers, the government officials, and also tech is an enabler, right? But it doesn't really solve the issues on the ground if the teachers are not trained enough and the children are not equipped with the right systems on how to approach a subtask. the tech can only help you so much. So you need to be able to have all of this existing in parallel. So yeah, that is what this work taught us. And and I hope that through the EGRA and EGMA that we did in Eswatini, equity in digital education is about making sure that the data that we collect leads to action, but at the same time, we need to have the systems put in place to support the tech that we're doing, because at the end of the day, this work is done and run by human beings. So yeah, that is what we discovered, and thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Clune with Open Development and Education, and I'm going to be talking about the Global EdTech Testbed Network today, or GETIN, G-E-T-N. So let's just jump into it. So what is GETIN and why does it exist? So in 2023, a group of like-minded stakeholders met in response to a growing global demand for collaboration in EdTech's evidence generation with the goal of democratizing evidence on EdTech. So this community, GETIN, was formed with support of the Jacobs Foundation in 2023. And GETIN really responds, this network, this community, really responds to two interconnected problems. One being that there is a huge global saturation of EdTech. So there's a lot that exists currently. And that, combined with the fact that a lot of evidence on this EdTech exists in spaces that are sometimes inaccessible or isolated from each other, presents limited opportunities for stakeholders to actually share practices around evidence generation in EdTech. So GETIN was created as an inclusive community that is currently governed by a few lead organizations, of which Open Development and Education is one. But the community is globally open, and our members are quite active. So what GETIN does is just convene a lot of meetings with its members to facilitate this network, to discuss best practices in EdTech evidence generation, share knowledge, co-develop solutions. And part of sharing this knowledge was GETIN's sort of flagship publication, which was a white paper which examined the kind of landscape or status of EdTech testbeds globally towards developing a framework on systemic EdTech testbeds. Now, I've said testbeds a lot, so what does this term actually mean, and what do you mean also by a systemic testbed? Well, you'll see on the next slide that framework was posed in the white paper. It's had a bit of a makeover since then, but fundamentally all the concepts are the same. So you could think of a testbed rather than siloed or isolated testing of EdTech A in one scenario and EdTech B in another. The idea of a testbed is it is a sustainable engine of a pipeline of EdTech tools, different EdTech tools that are appropriately matched with different environments, like authentic environments to which these EdTechs can be evaluated, such as schools, community organizations, or other spaces. And no one testbed is really alike. Globally, many exist, and testbeds are many are emerging as well. And many will have different preconditions to get started, as you'll see a few of those on the slide. And testbeds might also have different impact goals. So they might want to improve learning outcomes, improve pedagogical practices, help develop EdTech products. It could be a mix. Again, no testbed is the same, but the idea is that it is more of a pipeline and a sustainable way to test EdTech. Now, the systemic part of a testbed really comes from the idea that these three components you see on the slide, the EdTech, the test, and the bed, are underpinned by human actors from different communities collaborating on the testbed. So these actors often come from research institutes, school communities, funders, government officials, ministries of education, many different actors, and they collaborate, often co-design these different components of the testbed. So they may come together and decide, okay, what EdTechs are we actually testing? Why are we testing them? What does the bed actually look like? So what is the context of our test bed? who are the testers, what's the space, what's the scale, and importantly, relevant to evidence generation is, what are we actually going to test about this EdTech? What methodology and methods will be used, timeline and frequency, who's going to lead the testing and different components of the test bed. So the idea is through this systemic collaboration, you'll generate, or test beds tend to generate more authentic, more open, and oftentimes more rigorous evidence than we normally see. So what does this actually look like in practice? I'm going to present one test bed that Open Development and Education is a part of. And I should clarify that GETIN itself is a network. So GETIN itself does not actually design or have an ongoing test bed, but we're a community to share these learnings. So one test bed, again, that we're involved in with our partners at EdTech Impact and with the support of WISE and the Qatar Foundation is an AI education-focused testbed in Qatar, which aims to improve teachers' pedagogical capacities with AI tools, but also hopefully kind of produce a bit of a blueprint for the future of AI in education in Qatar by informing future policy decisions and scaling of tools. And you can see on this slide our approach. So there'll be 2 testing cycles over the next year. We'll be using design-based implementation research, which I don't have a ton of time to get into. But it is basically, we'll have 2 iterative cycles where teachers will be actively involved as champions, as participants in testing, evaluating the selected AI tools, but also they'll receive ongoing professional development to ensure they feel confident and have the tools and skills that they need to actually get meaningful participation out of this test bed. And all these learnings will be shared on a community platform hosted by the Ministry of Education with the support of EdTech Impact. And as we go on, we'll be able to share these learnings with teachers, with policymakers. So again, this is just to illustrate through the systemic collaboration of different stakeholders in Qatar, we'll be able to generate a lot of actionable evidence that can be used by a variety of stakeholders in schools and government for the future of AI tools in Qatar. And how this links back to GETIN is we'll be able to share this on a global stage as well, which this may inform other test beds, and we might also learn from other test beds in our own process as well. So ultimately, GETIN is really just this community that really wants to change how EdTech evidence practices are shared and produced, democratizing this knowledge for the betterment of learning. And if you'd like to know more, you can actually connect with us. So we have a website there where you can access all our publications and the white paper. Feel free to email me directly from that address you see on the screen, and follow us on LinkedIn to stay updated and involved. And anyone's welcome to be a part of the community. Thanks, and I'll pass it off to my colleague.
Okay, so thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. I'm Mohammed Sharad, a tech analyst at OpenDev. The Evidence Library tool, or EVDIP tool, is our attempt to address some of the challenges researchers face when accessing and analyzing global research. We've been working to create a more unified approach to research discovery, something that could potentially make finding relevant studies more straightforward while maintaining the depth that serious research requires. We serve 4 user groups with distinct needs. Researchers struggle with fragmented databases when conducting literature reviews across disciplines. We provide unified search across domains. Policymakers need credible evidence quickly for funding and program decisions. We give rapid access with geographic and thematic filters. Practitioners need proven strategies that they can implement, not just theory. They find evidence-based interventions tested in real contexts. International organizations need to understand research landscapes and identify gaps. Our visualization shows where research is concentrated. We provide a research ecosystem that connects evidence to action through AI analysis, geographic insights, and multi-language accessibility. The Evidence Library has 7 components working together. Our research database brings together research from multiple sources and makes everything searchable in one place, eliminating the frustrating experience of searching multiple databases with different interfaces. Our AI analysis tools understand context, summarize findings, and identify contradictions between studies, saving researchers hours of manual review. Geographic visualization reveals patterns invisible in traditional databases, showing where interventions are tested and research gaps exist. Analytics track citation patterns and emerging trends. Personal collections let users build curated knowledge bases. Mobile-first design ensures full functionality on smartphones, complete search, AI tools, and document analysis, not simplified versions. Universal accessibility supports users with disabilities through screen readers and keyboard navigation, while nine language support breaks down geographic and language barriers. What sets the evidence library apart is the speed and sophistication of our search capabilities. Let me explain how this works in practice. Traditional academic databases make you wait, you type a query, hit enter, and watch a loading screen while the database processes your request. We've eliminated that friction entirely. As you type, results appear instantly, which fundamentally changes how you explore research. Instead of carefully crafting the perfect query and hoping for good results, you can iteratively refine your search in real time, discovering connections you might never have found otherwise. Our faceted filtering system is where the real power emerges. Most databases treat filters as an afterthought. You search first, then maybe apply some basic filters. We've inverted this approach. You can start with any combination of geographic regions, research themes, publication types, and date ranges, and the system instantly shows you what's available. For example, a policymaker interested in intervention effectiveness can immediately narrow down studies from similar economic contexts, specific time periods, and particular research methodologies. Each filter refinement happens instantly, so they can explore different combinations until they find exactly what they need. The interactive map takes this further. Clicking on any country immediately reveals the research landscape for that region, including what topics are being studied and potential research gaps. This isn't just faster than traditional databases. It enables entirely new ways of discovering research, connections, and patterns. The Zotero integration represents the fundamental shift in how research moves from creation to global accessibility. Most research gets trapped within institutional boundaries. A brilliant study at one university might never be discovered by researchers elsewhere working on the same problem. Zotero is used by millions of researchers worldwide to manage references and collaborate through shared group libraries. When researchers add papers to the connected Zotero groups, those papers appear almost instantly in the evidence library. This transforms the research ecosystem. Previously, studies needed major journal publications and multiple databases indexing to become discoverable. Now, research entering a Zotero group becomes a part of a globally searchable, AI analyzable database. Google indexing amplifies this. Research buried in institutional repositories suddenly becomes discoverable to anyone. This creates a multiplier effect where one institution's research investment benefits the entire global community. This workflow feels natural because researchers use Zotero exactly as before, but their contributions immediately join a larger knowledge ecosystem. Our AI capabilities transform the platform from a search tool into a research assistant. Reading hundreds of studies for systematic reviews is incredibly time-consuming. We've automated most of this cognitive work without replacing human judgment. We offer multiple LLM models because different models excel at different analysis types. Users can experiment with different models and compare responses, improving analysis quality. The document analysis is like having a research assistant who has read every paper. Instead of skimming abstracts, you can ask direct questions like, what were the effect sizes or how did they handle bias? The AI can provide page references when needed. Question generation helps, like when exploring unfamiliar research areas. The AI suggests relevant questions based on document content. Document screening is valuable for systematic reviews. Create custom questions that sets the AI applies consistently across papers, speeding up initial screening while maintaining consistency. Semantic recommendations go beyond keyword matching. The AI understands conceptual relationships and suggests thematically related papers from adjacent fields. Mobile-first design and universal accessibility are fundamental to expanding research access. For many researchers globally, smartphones are their primary computing device. In Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and parts of Latin America, mobile internet penetration far exceeds desktop access. A graduate student in Lagos, a policy researcher in rural Cambodia, or a practitioner working in remote areas of Peru might have excellent mobile connectivity but limited access to desktop computers. Our platform delivers the complete research experience on mobile, not a watered-down version, but full research capabilities, AI analysis tools, PDF viewing, and collection management. Offline capabilities let researchers download papers with good connectivity and read them later. Multiple cache layers ensure instant performance regardless of connection quality. Universal accessibility means research should be accessible to everyone. Screen reader compatibility supports researchers with visual impairments. Full keyboard navigation serves users with motor impairments, and nine language support breaks down geographic barriers. This creates a truly global research commons where language diversity becomes a strength rather than a barrier to knowledge sharing. The evidence library is our contribution to addressing some of the ongoing challenges in global research access. We've tried to build something that might be useful whether you're a graduate student accessing research on your phone, a policymaker needing evidence synthesis, or part of an international organization working across different regions. We believe the combination of search capabilities, AI analysis tools, and accessibility features could potentially help some traditional research barriers reduce some traditional research barriers related to geographic location, language, or technology access. Though we recognize there's still much work to be done in this area. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the evidence library.